The morning sun cast long shadows through the small window of Maria's tiny apartment in Tijuana. She sat on the edge of her bed, staring at the bright yellow paper that had changed everything. The eviction notice seemed to glow in the early light, its harsh words burning into her mind like a hot iron. 30 days to vacate the premises, she whispered to herself, reading the same line for the 100th time. But those 30 days had already passed 3 days ago. The landlord had been patient, more patient than most. But patience has limits even for the kindest people. Maria was only 28, but she felt like she had lived 100 years in the past few months. Her dark hair, once shiny and well-kept, now hung limp around her shoulders. Her clothes, though clean, were worn thin from too many washes. The mirror in her small bathroom showed a woman who looked older than her years, with worry lines that shouldn't have been there yet. Just 6 months ago, life had been different. She had worked at the electronics factory on the outskirts of the city for nearly 5 years. It wasn't the best job in the world, but it paid the bills. She assembled small parts for televisions and radios that would be shipped to America. The work was steady, the pay was fair, and Maria had even managed to save a little money each month. But then came the announcement that nobody wanted to hear. The company was moving operations to a cheaper location. 300 workers would lose their jobs. Maria was one of them. "We're sorry," the manager had said that day, not looking anyone in the eye. "We know this is hard, but business is business, business is business." Those words had echoed in Maria's head for weeks after that. What about life? What about the families who depended on those jobs? What about the mothers and fathers who didn't know how they would feed their children next month? Maria had tried everything. She walked from business to business asking if anyone needed workers. She checked the newspaper every morning for job listings. She even tried selling small crafts at the weekend market. But nothing worked. The economy was tough and there were too many people looking for too few jobs. Her unemployment benefits had helped for a while, but they didn't last long. In Mexico, help from the government was limited. After a few months, the money stopped coming. That's when the real panic began. The apartment was small, but it was home. 2 tiny bedrooms, a kitchen barely big enough for 2 people, and a living room that served as everything else. Maria shared this space with her mother, Carmen, who was 67 years old and recovering from a stroke she had suffered 8 months earlier. Carmen had been a strong woman her whole life. She had raised Maria alone after Maria's father left when she was just 5 years old. Carmen worked as a house cleaner for wealthy families, sometimes working 16 hours a day to make ends meet. She never complained, never made excuses, and never let Maria go to bed hungry. But the stroke had changed everything. One morning, Carmen couldn't speak properly. The words came out wrong, mixed up and unclear. The left side of her body felt weak and heavy. The doctor said she was lucky to be alive, but the damage was permanent. She would need constant care and help with daily activities. Maria had become the caregiver overnight. She helped her mother eat, helped her to the bathroom, helped her get dressed. Physical therapy sessions 3 times a week cost money they didn't have. Medicine was expensive. Special food that was easier to swallow was more costly than regular food. Now, sitting with the eviction notice in her hands, Maria did the math one more time. She had exactly 43 pesos left in her wallet. That was about $2.50. The rent was 3,000 pesos behind. The electricity bill was overdue. They had eaten rice and beans for the past 4 days because that's all they could afford. Her mother was sleeping in the next room. Carmen didn't know about the eviction notice yet. Maria hadn't had the heart to tell her. What would be the point? It would only worry her more, and stress was bad for stroke patients. Maria walked to the small kitchen and opened the refrigerator. A half-empty bottle of water, some leftover rice, and a few wilted vegetables stared back at her. Tomorrow even this would be gone. She closed the door and leaned against it, feeling the weight of the world on her shoulders. She had always been a woman of faith. Her grandmother had raised her in the Catholic Church, teaching her to pray every night and to trust in God's plan. But lately Maria wondered if God had forgotten about people like her. The rich seemed to get richer while the poor got poorer. Where was the justice in that? Still, prayer was all she had left. Maria knelt down on the cold kitchen floor, clasping her hands together the way her grandmother had taught her. The tiles were hard against her knees, but she barely noticed. "Please, God," she whispered. "I don't know what to do anymore. I've tried everything I can think of. I've looked for work everywhere. I've been patient. I've been grateful for what we have. But now I don't know how to take care of my mother. I don't know where we'll sleep tomorrow night. Tears started flowing down her cheeks. She tried to keep her voice low so her mother wouldn't hear. I'm not asking for much. Just a chance. Just some way to earn money so we can stay in our home. My mother has been through enough. She doesn't deserve to live on the street. The apartment was quiet except for the sound of her own breathing. Outside, she could hear children playing in the courtyard, their laughter drifting through the thin walls. Life was going on normally for everyone else. People were coming home from work, cooking dinner, watching television. Simple, everyday activities that now seemed like impossible luxuries. Maria stayed on her knees for nearly 10 minutes, pouring her heart out in silent prayer. She asked for strength, for wisdom, for a miracle. She promised to work harder than anyone if just given the chance. She promised to help others if her situation improved. She bargained with heaven like her life depended on it because it did. When she finally stood up, her knees ached and her eyes were red from crying. But something inside her felt slightly different. Not hopeful exactly, but calmer. Resigned, maybe. Whatever happened next, she would face it with dignity. She was wiping her face with a dish towel when she heard it, a soft, gentle knock at the front door. Not the harsh pounding of an angry landlord or the official rap of a government worker. This was different. Polite, almost hesitant, Maria froze. Nobody visited them anymore. Their few friends were dealing with their own problems. Family members lived far away or had troubles of their own. Who could be knocking at their door at this time of evening? The knock came again, just as gentle as before. Maria looked toward her mother's bedroom door, making sure Carmen was still sleeping. Then, taking a deep breath, she walked to the front door and looked through the small peephole. On the other side stood a man she had never seen before. Maria pressed her eye closer to the peephole, trying to get a better look at the stranger standing outside her door. He appeared to be in his early 30s with kind eyes that seemed to hold depth she couldn't understand. His skin was weathered by sun and wind like someone who spent most of his time outdoors. His dark hair was a bit long and slightly wavy, and he had a short, neat beard. What struck her most was how peaceful he looked. In a neighborhood where people always seemed to be in a hurry or worried about something, this man stood completely still and calm. He wore simple clothes, a plain white shirt, dark pants, and worn leather sandals. Over his shoulder hung a small canvas bag that looked like it contained all his possessions. Maria's heart was beating fast. In Tijuana, you didn't open your door to strangers, especially not when you were a woman alone with an elderly mother. There were too many stories of robberies, scams, and worse. But something about this man felt different. There was no tension in his posture, no shifting of weight that suggested impatience or hidden motives. She stepped back from the door and called out in Spanish, "What do you want?" His voice came through the thin wood, soft and gentle. "I'm sorry to bother you so late," he said, his Spanish perfect but carrying an accent she couldn't quite place. "My name is Emmanuel. I was walking through your neighborhood and felt drawn to stop here. I know this might sound strange, but I believe you might need some help." Maria frowned. How could a complete stranger know anything about her situation? She hadn't told anyone except her mother about the eviction notice. She kept their financial problems private out of pride and shame. "I don't need help," she lied through the door. "And I don't have any money if you're looking for donations." There was a pause before Emmanuel spoke again. "I'm not asking for money. Actually, I was wondering if you might have space for someone to stay for a few days. I can help with household tasks, cooking, cleaning, whatever you need. I have experience caring for people who are recovering from illness." Maria's breath caught in her throat. How could he possibly know about her mother's stroke? She had never seen this man before in her life. She looked through the peephole again, studying his face more carefully. There was something familiar about him, but she couldn't place what it was. "How do you know about my mother?" she asked, her voice sharper now. "I notice things," Emmanuel replied simply. "I can see the wheelchair ramp by your front steps. There are medication bottles in your window, and there's a sadness in this place that speaks of someone struggling to recover." Maria looked at the small wooden ramp her neighbor had built months ago to help get her mother's wheelchair in and out. She glanced at the window where she had been drying empty medicine bottles to use as flower vases, a small attempt to bring beauty into their difficult life. This stranger was very observant, but that still didn't explain why he had chosen their door. "Why should I trust you?" she asked. "I don't know anything about you." "You shouldn't trust me," Emmanuel said, and his honesty surprised her. "You don't know me. But sometimes in life we have to make decisions based on what we feel in our hearts rather than what makes sense in our heads. I'm not asking you to trust me immediately. I'm asking you to listen to what your heart tells you about whether I mean you harm. Maria closed her eyes and tried to feel what her heart was telling her. All she could sense was the same strange peace she had felt at the end of her prayer in the kitchen. This man's presence seemed to carry that same feeling with it. I can't pay you anything, she said. We barely have enough food for ourselves. I don't need payment, Emmanuel replied. I have everything I need. What I'm looking for is a chance to serve, to help where help is needed. Your family needs care and I can provide it. That seems like a fair exchange to me. Something in his voice made Maria want to cry. It had been so long since anyone had offered to help without wanting something in return. In recent months, people either avoided her family entirely or made offers of help that came with strings attached. But this stranger was asking for nothing except the opportunity to serve others. Against every bit of common sense she possessed, Maria found herself reaching for the chain lock. Her hand hesitated for a moment, then slowly slid the chain free. She turned the deadbolt and opened the door just a crack, keeping the security chain engaged. Through the small opening, she could see Emmanuel more clearly. His eyes were the most striking thing about him. Dark brown, almost black, but filled with a warmth and compassion that seemed impossible to fake. When he smiled at her, she felt that strange peace grow stronger. Thank you, he said simply. I know this isn't easy for you. I must be losing my mind, Maria muttered to herself. But she found herself unhooking the security chain and opening the door wider. Emmanuel stepped into her small apartment and immediately the space felt different. Lighter somehow despite the late hour. He looked around the simple room with appreciation rather than judgment, nodding as if he approved of what he saw. You keep a beautiful home, he said, and Maria almost laughed. Beautiful? The furniture was old and mismatched. The walls needed painting. The carpet was worn thin in places. But Emmanuel seemed to see something she had missed. It's not much, she said, suddenly self-conscious about the humble state of their apartment. Home isn't about having expensive things, Emmanuel replied, setting his small bag down by the door. It's about love, and this place has love in every corner. Maria led him to the small living room, gesturing for him to sit on their old couch. As he settled into the cushions, she found herself studying his face again. There was something ageless about him, as if he could be 30 or 50 or any age in between. His hands resting calmly on his knees looked strong but gentle, with calluses that suggested he was no stranger to physical work. Tell me about your mother, Emmanuel said, his voice soft with genuine interest. Maria found herself telling him things she hadn't shared with anyone. About her mother's stroke, about the struggles with speech and mobility, about the expensive medications and therapy sessions they couldn't afford. She talked about her own job loss, about their financial problems, about the eviction notice sitting on her kitchen counter. As she spoke, Emmanuel listened with complete attention. He didn't interrupt, didn't offer quick solutions, didn't make the sympathetic noises people usually made when hearing sad stories. He simply listened as if her words were the most important thing in the world at that moment. May I see her? Emmanuel asked when Maria finished talking. Maria hesitated. Her mother was sleeping and Carmen could be frightened if she woke up to see a strange man in their apartment. But something about Emmanuel's manner suggested he knew how to be around sick people without alarming them. She might be awake, Maria said. Sometimes she has trouble sleeping since the stroke. They walked quietly to her mother's bedroom door. Maria knocked gently and called out, Mama, are you awake? A weak voice answered from inside. Si, mija. I'm awake. Maria pushed the door open and was surprised to see her mother sitting up in bed looking more alert than she had in weeks. Carmen's eyes went immediately to Emmanuel, but instead of fear or confusion, her face showed a strange recognition. Mama, this is Emmanuel, Maria said. He's going to stay with us for a few days to help out. Carmen smiled, the first genuine smile Maria had seen from her in months. Of course he is, she said simply, as if she had been expecting him all along. Maria woke up the next morning to a sound she hadn't heard in 8 months, her mother laughing. Actually laughing, not the weak chuckle that had been the best Carmen could manage since her stroke. This was the rich, warm laughter Maria remembered from her childhood. She jumped out of bed and rushed to her mother's room, expecting to find Carmen watching something funny on the small television. Instead, she found her mother sitting on the edge of the bed, talking clearly and easily with Emmanuel, who was sitting in the old wooden chair beside her. "Buenos dias, mija," Carmen said when she saw Maria in the doorway. Her words were clear, without the slurred speech that had become normal since the stroke. "Emmanuel has been telling me the most wonderful stories." Maria stared at her mother in shock. Yesterday, Carmen had struggled to say even simple sentences. She had to concentrate hard to form each word, and even then they often came out wrong. But now she was speaking as if nothing had ever been wrong. "Mama," Maria said slowly, "how are you feeling this morning?" "Better than I have in months," Carmen replied, standing up from the bed without help. "My head feels clear for the first time in so long. And look." She held up her left hand and wiggled her fingers with ease. The same hand that had been weak and nearly useless since her stroke was now moving normally. Emmanuel stood up from his chair, smiling at Maria's amazement. "Your mother was just telling me about the garden she used to keep behind your old house," he said. "She misses growing her own vegetables." "I was good with tomatoes," Carmen said proudly. "And peppers. Oh, the peppers I could grow. Emmanuel thinks maybe we could start a small garden here, even in pots on the balcony." Maria felt dizzy. She sat down heavily on her mother's bed, trying to make sense of what she was seeing. Stroke patients didn't just wake up one day completely better. The doctors had been very clear about that. The damage to Carmen's brain was permanent. Speech therapy and physical therapy might help a little, but there would always be limitations. "Mama, yesterday you could barely walk to the kitchen by yourself," Maria said. "Now you're talking about gardening?" "Yesterday feels like a dream," Carmen replied, walking to the window and looking out at the morning sun. "A bad dream that's finally over. I feel like myself again." Emmanuel caught Maria's eye and nodded toward the kitchen. "Could I speak with you for a moment?" he asked quietly. They left Carmen looking out the window and walked to the small kitchen. Maria's mind was spinning with questions and confusion. She had seen her mother's condition with her own eyes every day for 8 months. This kind of sudden improvement wasn't possible. "What did you do to her?" she asked Emmanuel, trying to keep her voice low. "I sat with her," Emmanuel replied simply. "I listened to her stories. I held her hand while she talked about her fears and her pain. Sometimes that's all healing requires, someone to sit with us in our suffering." "But stroke damage doesn't just disappear overnight," Maria insisted. "The doctors said." "Doctors know a great deal about the human body," Emmanuel interrupted gently. "But they don't know everything about the human spirit. Sometimes the body holds on to illness because the spirit has lost hope. When hope returns, healing can follow." Maria wanted to argue, but she couldn't deny what she was seeing. Her mother was moving around the apartment with energy she hadn't shown in months. Carmen was speaking clearly, thinking clearly, and acting like her old self again. "Who are you?" Maria asked Emmanuel, studying his face for clues. "I'm someone who cares about your family," he replied. "Someone who was sent to help when help was needed most." "Sent by who?" Emmanuel smiled but didn't answer directly. Instead, he asked, "Does it matter who sent me if the help is real?" Over the next few hours, Maria watched in amazement as her mother continued to improve. Carmen insisted on cooking breakfast for the 3 of them, something she hadn't been able to do since her stroke. She moved around the small kitchen with confidence, remembering where everything was kept, cooking with the skill she had always possessed. "This is impossible," Maria whispered to herself as she watched her mother flip eggs perfectly in the old frying pan. But Emmanuel seemed to find nothing unusual in any of it. He helped where help was needed, stayed out of the way when Carmen wanted to do things herself, and talked with both women as if miraculous healings happened every day. During breakfast, Maria noticed other changes in her mother. Carmen's color was better. The gray, tired look that had worried Maria for months was gone. Her appetite was strong, and she ate more than she had in weeks. Most importantly, the spark of life had returned to her eyes. "I want to go to the market today," Carmen announced as they finished eating. "I want to pick out fresh vegetables for soup tonight." Maria nearly choked on her coffee. "Mama, you haven't left the apartment in 3 months. The walk to the market is 8 blocks. "Then it's time I got some exercise," Carmen replied with determination. "Emmanuel, would you like to come with us? I can show you the best places to shop." "I would be honored," Emmanuel said, and Maria could see he truly meant it. Later that morning, the 3 of them walked through the neighborhood together. Maria stayed close to her mother, ready to catch her if she stumbled or became tired. But Carmen walked with steady steps, greeting neighbors she hadn't seen in months, stopping to admire flowers in window boxes, moving like a woman 20 years younger. At the market, something even stranger happened. The vegetable seller, an older man named Roberto who had known their family for years, took one look at Carmen and broke into a huge smile. "Señora Carmen, you look wonderful. Like a new person," Roberto exclaimed, abandoning his other customers to come around the counter and embrace her. "I feel like a new person," Carmen replied, laughing. "Thanks to my daughter and our friend Emmanuel here." Roberto looked at Emmanuel with curiosity and respect. "Anyone who can bring back Carmen's smile is a friend of mine," he said, shaking Emmanuel's hand warmly. But then Roberto did something unexpected. He began loading their shopping bag with the best vegetables from his stand. Ripe tomatoes, fresh onions, perfect peppers, leafy green lettuce. "Roberto, we can't afford all this," Maria protested. But the man waved her concerns away. "Today you are my guests," he said firmly. "Take what you need." "There's no charge for friends," Maria was confused. Roberto was a kind man, but he was also a businessman who needed to make money to feed his own family. This generosity was completely unlike him. As they walked through the rest of the market, the same thing kept happening. The bread seller gave them fresh rolls for free. The fruit vendor insisted they take a bag of oranges as a gift. Even the meat seller, usually the grumpiest man in the market, smiled broadly and offered them soup bones at no charge. "I don't understand what's happening," Maria whispered to Emmanuel as they walked home, their bags full of food they couldn't have afforded. "People are responding to joy," Emmanuel explained. "Your mother's healing brings happiness to everyone who sees it. That happiness wants to express itself through generosity and kindness." "But why are you here?" Maria pressed. "What do you want from us?" Emmanuel stopped walking and looked directly into her eyes. "I want nothing from you," he said quietly. "I want everything for you. I want your mother to be healthy. I want your family to have enough food. I want you to have work that brings dignity and purpose. I want your lives to be filled with hope instead of fear." "But why?" Maria asked, tears starting in her eyes. "Why do you care about strangers?" Emmanuel's expression became infinitely tender. "Because there are no strangers," he said simply. "There is only family." The phone rang at exactly 7 in the morning, jolting Maria awake from the deepest sleep she'd had in months. She stumbled to the kitchen, wondering who could be calling so early. The number on the caller ID belonged to her landlord, Señor Ramirez. Maria's heart sank. This was it. He was calling to tell her the eviction would happen today. She would have to pack their few belongings and find somewhere else to go with her mother. After yesterday's strange events, she had almost forgotten about their desperate situation. "Hello, Señor Ramirez," she answered, trying to keep her voice steady. "Maria, good morning." His voice sounded cheerful, almost excited. This wasn't the tone she had expected from a man about to throw them out of their home. "I have wonderful news for you." "News?" Maria repeated, confused. "Yes, the most amazing thing has happened. Yesterday evening, a man came to my office. He said he wanted to help a family in need, specifically your family. He paid all your back rent, plus the next 3 months in advance." Maria nearly dropped the phone. "What?" "Señor Ramirez, I think there's been some mistake." "No mistake at all. I have the money right here in my safe. Cash, all of it. The man said he had heard about your mother's illness and your job situation. He wanted to help, but he insisted on remaining anonymous. Wouldn't even tell me his name." "Can you describe him?" Maria asked, though she was already beginning to suspect who it might be. "About 30, maybe a little older. Kind eyes, very peaceful manner. He spoke beautiful Spanish, but I thought I detected a slight accent. Very well dressed, but simple clothes." "Why, do you know who he might be?" Maria looked toward the living room where Emmanuel was quietly helping her mother with her morning exercises. "I might have an idea," she said softly. "Well, whoever he is, he's an angel," Señor Ramirez continued. "He saved you from eviction and gave me the most peaceful feeling. I haven't felt that calm in years. Actually, I've been thinking. If you need more time to find steady work, don't worry about it. We'll work something out." After hanging up, Maria walked slowly to the living room. Emmanuel was sitting on the floor with Carmen, gently helping her stretch her legs. Her mother was laughing at something he had said, her face bright with joy. "Emmanuel," Maria said quietly, "we need to talk." He looked up at her with those impossibly calm eyes. "Of course. Carmen, Why don't you rest for a few minutes while Maria and I step outside? They walked out to the small balcony that overlooked the courtyard. The morning air was fresh and cool, and Maria could hear children playing in the distance. Normal sounds of normal life, but nothing about her life felt normal anymore. "The rent," she said simply. "It was you, wasn't it?" Emmanuel leaned against the balcony railing, looking out over the neighborhood. "Does it matter who paid it?" "Of course it matters. That was thousands of pesos. Where did you get that kind of money? And why would you do that for strangers?" "I told you yesterday," Emmanuel replied gently. "There are no strangers. There is only family." Before Maria could respond, there was a knock at the front door. She went to answer it, finding Diego, the owner of the small grocery store 2 blocks away. He was standing outside with 2 large boxes filled with food. "Buenos dias, Maria," Diego said, looking slightly embarrassed. "I hope you don't think I'm crazy, but I had the strangest feeling this morning that I should bring you these things." Maria stared at the boxes. She could see rice, beans, fresh vegetables, milk, bread, and even some meat. More food than her family had seen in weeks. "Diego, I can't pay for all this," she protested. No, you don't understand," Diego said quickly. "I'm not asking for money. I'm giving this to you. Yesterday I made more sales than I've made in any single day this year. People were coming from all over the neighborhood, buying things, happy and generous. I made more profit yesterday than I usually make in a week." He paused, shifting the heavy boxes in his arms. "Last night I couldn't stop thinking about your family, about your mother's illness and your job troubles. Everyone in the neighborhood knows how hard things have been for you. And I kept hearing this voice in my head saying, 'Share your blessing.' So here I am." Maria helped him bring the boxes inside, still unable to understand what was happening. Diego set the food on their small kitchen table, which was barely big enough to hold it all. "There's one more thing," Diego said, pulling an envelope from his pocket. "A man came to my store yesterday evening. Well-dressed, very polite. He bought a few small items, but when he paid, he left this envelope on my counter. He said it was for the family with the sick mother on Esperanza Street." "That's you, right?" Maria opened the envelope with trembling hands. Inside were 500 pesos, more cash than she had seen in months. "Who was this man?" she asked, though she already knew. "I'd never seen him before, but there was something special about him. Very calm, very kind. He made me feel. I don't know how to explain it. Hopeful, I guess, like everything was going to be all right." After Diego left, Maria sat at the kitchen table surrounded by more food than they had eaten in the past month combined. Emmanuel had disappeared somewhere and her mother was taking a nap. For the first time in weeks, Maria had complete quiet to think. Nothing about the last 2 days made sense. Miraculous healing, mysterious payments, unexpected generosity from neighbors. These things didn't happen in real life, but they were happening. She could see the evidence all around her. Her phone rang again. This time it was Rosa, who owned the small cafe where Maria sometimes bought coffee when she had extra money. "Maria, I hope you don't mind me calling," Rosa said, "but I have a proposition for you. I need help in my cafe, someone to serve customers, help with cooking, keep the books. The pay isn't much, but it's honest work and the tips can be good. Would you be interested?" Maria felt tears starting in her eyes. "Rosa, I would love to work for you, but I don't understand. Yesterday you said you couldn't afford to hire anyone." "That was yesterday," Rosa replied with a laugh. "Yesterday was the busiest day I've had all year. People kept coming in, ordering food, leaving big tips, telling their friends about the place. If business keeps up like this, I'm going to need help just to keep up with demand. When can I start? How about tomorrow morning? We can try it for a week and see how it goes." After hanging up, Maria put her head in her hands and cried. Not tears of despair this time, but tears of relief and confusion and gratitude all mixed together. In 24 hours, her life had completely changed. Her mother was healthy, their rent was paid, they had more food than they knew what to do with, and she had a job offer. Emmanuel appeared in the kitchen doorway, carrying a cup of tea. "Good news?" he asked, settling into the chair across from her. "You know it's good news," Maria said, wiping her eyes, "just like you know about everything else that's been happening. Rosa offered me a job, and somehow I think you already knew she would." Emmanuel set the tea in front of her. It smelled like chamomile and honey, soothing and warm. "I know that when people open their hearts to love and service, good things follow," he said. "Your neighbor Diego opened his heart to generosity yesterday, so his business prospered. Rosa opened her heart to community, So her cafe became a place where people wanted to gather. The landlord opened his heart to compassion, so he found peace. And what about you? Maria asked. What did you open your heart to? Emmanuel smiled, and for just a moment Maria thought she saw something infinite in his eyes. Something vast and loving and completely beyond her understanding. I opened my heart to you, he said simply. By the end of Maria's first week at Rosa's cafe, word had spread throughout the entire neighborhood about the miraculous changes in her family's life. People talked in hushed, excited voices about Carmen's sudden recovery and the mysterious man who had appeared just when help was needed most. Maria arrived at work each morning to find the cafe buzzing with conversation about Emmanuel. Customers who had never shown interest in anything beyond their morning coffee were now asking detailed questions about the stranger staying with the Gonzalez family. I heard he can heal people just by touching them, whispered Senora Lopez, an elderly woman who came in every day for sweetbread and hot chocolate. My cousin Pedro said the man looked at his infected cut, and it healed completely within hours, added Carlos, the mechanic from down the street. That's nothing, interrupted Luz, who sold flowers at the weekend market. I saw him talk to little Ana Rodriguez, the one who hasn't spoken since her father died last year. After 5 minutes with him, she was laughing and chatting like nothing had ever been wrong. Rosa pulled Maria aside during the lunch rush. Is it true what people are saying about your friend Emmanuel? About the healings? Maria paused in wiping down tables. She had been dreading this conversation all week. I don't know what to believe anymore, Rosa. I can only tell you what I've seen with my own eyes. And what have you seen? My mother can walk, talk, and think clearly for the first time in 8 months. Neighbors who have been struggling financially suddenly have good fortune. People who were depressed and hopeless now seem filled with joy. And it all started the day Emmanuel knocked on our door. Rosa nodded thoughtfully. He was in here yesterday afternoon. Just sat quietly in the corner booth drinking coffee and watching people. But something about his presence made everyone in the cafe feel, I don't know how to describe it, peaceful, happy, connected to each other. What do you mean, connected? Well, you know how usually people come in, order their food, eat alone, and leave? Yesterday was different. Strangers were talking to each other, sharing stories, laughing together. Old enemies were shaking hands and apologizing for past disagreements. It was like the whole cafe became one big family. That evening, Maria returned home to find a small crowd gathered outside her apartment building. Men, women, and children were sitting on the steps and standing in the courtyard, all waiting patiently. Some looked sick or tired. Others appeared to be carrying heavy emotional burdens. But all of them had the same hopeful expression. What's going on? Maria asked Senora Morales, who lived in the apartment below hers. We're waiting to see Emmanuel, the older woman explained. Word has gotten out about what he did for your mother. People are coming from all over the city, hoping he can help them too. Maria pushed through the crowd and climbed to her second-floor apartment. Inside, she found Emmanuel sitting at their small kitchen table with a young man she didn't recognize. The stranger was crying softly while Emmanuel listened with complete attention. I lost my job 3 months ago, the young man was saying. My wife is pregnant with our first child, and I don't know how I'm going to support them. I've applied everywhere, but nobody will hire me. I'm starting to think I'm worthless. Emmanuel reached across the table and placed his hand gently on the man's shoulder. You are not worthless, he said with quiet conviction. You are a child of God, created with purpose and dignity. Your value doesn't come from your job or your bank account. It comes from who you are inside. But how can I provide for my family if I can't find work? Tell me about your skills, Emmanuel said. What are you good at? What brings you joy? I used to help my grandfather repair motorcycles when I was young, the man replied, wiping his eyes. I loved working with my hands, figuring out how engines worked. But that was years ago. Skills like that don't disappear, Emmanuel assured him. They just wait for the right opportunity. Tomorrow morning, go to the motorcycle repair shop on Revolution Street. Ask to speak with the owner, Senor Gutierrez. Tell him Emmanuel sent you. The young man looked confused. I don't understand. Do you know Senor Gutierrez? Emmanuel smiled mysteriously. Just mention my name. He'll understand. After the young man left, Maria sat down across from Emmanuel. Through the window, she could see the crowd outside was growing larger. How many people are out there? She asked. About 30 right now, Emmanuel replied calmly. But more keep arriving. Emmanuel, this is getting out of hand. People are treating you like some kind of... She paused, not sure how to finish the sentence. Like some kind of what? He asked gently. Like a saint, or a prophet, or something more than human. Emmanuel leaned back in his chair, studying Maria's face with those penetrating eyes. What do you think I am? The question hung in the air between them. Maria had been asking herself the same thing for days, but she had been afraid to voice her suspicions even to herself. I think you're someone extraordinary, she said carefully, but I don't know what that means. Let me ask you something, Emmanuel said. If someone told you that love could heal the sick, would you believe them? I suppose it's possible. Emotional healing, maybe. What if they told you that love could provide for the poor, through inspiring generosity in others? Yes. What if they told you that love could bring hope to the hopeless? Yes, I've seen that happen. Emmanuel nodded. Then you've seen everything I do. I don't perform magic tricks or supernatural miracles. I simply love people, and love has power that most people have forgotten about. But even as he spoke, Maria noticed things that didn't quite fit his explanation. When Emmanuel prayed over food, it seemed to multiply. Their groceries lasted far longer than they should have. When he touched sick people, their symptoms often improved dramatically within hours. When he spoke with those who were grieving, they found comfort that seemed to come from beyond normal human sympathy. Her mother appeared in the kitchen doorway looking concerned. Mija, there are more people outside now. They're asking if Emmanuel will come out and speak to them. I'll go talk to them, Emmanuel said, standing up. Wait, Maria said quickly. Emmanuel, these people are looking for something from you that you might not be able to give them. They want miracles. They want their problem solved instantly. What happens when you can't meet their expectations? Emmanuel paused at the door, his expression becoming sad. The same thing that always happens when people look for God in the wrong places. They become disappointed, then angry, then they stop looking altogether. Are you saying you're not who they think you are? I'm saying that who I am doesn't matter as much as who they become. If meeting me helps them discover their own capacity for love, faith, and service, then I've succeeded. If they just want magic tricks and easy answers, then we've all failed. He walked to the door, then turned back one more time. Maria, what do you see when you look at me? Really look at me? Maria stared into his eyes, searching for answers to questions she was afraid to ask. In those dark depths, she saw infinite compassion, unshakable peace, and a love so profound it seemed to encompass every human being who had ever lived or ever would live. I see someone who loves us more than we love ourselves, she whispered. Emmanuel smiled, and for just a moment, the small kitchen seemed filled with light that had nothing to do with the overhead bulb. Then you see truly, he said, and stepped outside to meet the waiting crowd. From her window, Maria watched as Emmanuel sat on the front steps and began speaking quietly to the gathered people. She couldn't hear his words, but she could see the effect they had. Tense faces relaxed. Worried expressions became peaceful. People who had arrived as strangers began talking to each other like old friends. But Maria also noticed something else. In the back of the crowd, partially hidden in the shadows, stood several men she didn't recognize. They weren't participating in the gentle community that was forming around Emmanuel. Instead, they were watching everything with suspicious, calculating eyes. Trouble was coming. Maria could feel it. 3 days later, Maria came home from work to find their small apartment empty. This was unusual. Emmanuel was always there when she returned, usually helping her mother with exercises or preparing dinner. Carmen was napping in her bedroom, but Emmanuel was nowhere to be found. Mama, where is Emmanuel? Maria asked, gently waking her mother. He said he needed to pray, Carmen replied, stretching and sitting up in bed. He went to the little garden behind the building. That was about an hour ago. Maria walked through their apartment and out the back door that led to the small courtyard behind the building. It wasn't really a garden, just a patch of dirt where the landlord had planted a few struggling bushes and an old lemon tree. Most tenants used it to hang laundry or store things they couldn't fit in their apartments. At first, she didn't see Emmanuel anywhere. Then she noticed a figure kneeling beneath the lemon tree, so still he almost seemed part of the landscape. As she got closer, Maria realized something extraordinary was happening. A soft golden light seemed to surround Emmanuel as he knelt in prayer. It wasn't the harsh yellow of electric lighting or the warm orange of sunset. This was something else entirely, a gentle radiance that seemed to come from Emmanuel himself. Maria stopped walking, afraid to disturb whatever was taking place. Emmanuel's head was bowed, his hands folded in front of him, his lips moving in silent prayer. The light around him pulsed gently, like a heartbeat made visible. As she watched, frozen in place, Emmanuel slowly raised his head and opened his eyes. For just a moment, they looked directly at each other across the small courtyard, and Maria saw something that made her knees weak. His eyes held depths of sorrow and love that no human being should be able to contain. It was as if she was looking at someone who had witnessed every act of cruelty and kindness in human history, who had felt every moment of pain and joy that had ever existed. But it was his hands that made Maria gasp and take a step backward. As Emmanuel raised them in front of himself, still deep in prayer, she could see what appeared to be old scars on his palms and wrists. Scars that looked like they had been made by nails. The logical part of Maria's mind immediately began offering explanations. Emmanuel worked with his hands. He was probably a carpenter or construction worker. Those could be scars from any number of accidents. The strange light was probably just the setting sun reflecting off something nearby. But her heart knew better. Her heart recognized what her mind refused to accept. Emmanuel noticed her staring at his hands and slowly lowered them. The mysterious light around him began to fade, leaving just an ordinary man kneeling under an ordinary tree in an ordinary courtyard. "Maria," he said quietly, "come sit with me." She walked toward him on unsteady legs, her thoughts racing. When she reached the lemon tree, she sat down on the ground beside him, not trusting herself to speak. "You saw," Emmanuel said. It wasn't a question. "I saw something," Maria whispered. "But I don't understand what." Emmanuel turned to face her fully. In the fading daylight, his features seemed both familiar and impossible. There was something timeless about his face, as if she had been seeing it her entire life without realizing it. "What do you think you saw?" he asked gently. "Light," Maria said, her voice barely audible, "and scars on your hands. Scars that looked like—" She couldn't finish the sentence. It was too incredible, too impossible to say out loud. "Like nail wounds," Emmanuel completed for her. Maria nodded, tears starting to flow down her cheeks. "But that's impossible." "That's absolutely impossible, is it?" Emmanuel asked. "You've seen your mother healed of a stroke that doctors said was permanent. You've watched neighbors become generous beyond their means. You've witnessed strangers become family. Which of those things should be possible?" "Those are different," Maria protested weakly. "Those could have logical explanations, could they?" Emmanuel asked. "Or have you been witnessing love in action? Divine love working through ordinary people to accomplish extraordinary things?" Maria looked at his face in the gathering darkness. The man sitting beside her looked completely human, tired, humble, approachable. But there was something in his presence that seemed to fill the entire universe. "Who are you?" she whispered. Instead of answering directly, Emmanuel asked, "Who do you believe that I am?" The question echoed in Maria's mind. She had heard those words before, long ago in Sunday school, in stories she had learned as a child but had half forgotten as an adult. Stories about a carpenter who healed the sick, fed the hungry, and loved people that others rejected. Stories about someone who died and rose again, who promised to be with his followers always. "I believe," she said slowly, her voice shaking, "that you are the one my grandmother told me stories about. The one she said would never leave us alone no matter how dark things got." Emmanuel smiled, and in that smile Maria saw infinite tenderness. "Your grandmother was a wise woman. She understood that love never abandons those who need it most in time." "But why?" Maria asked, tears flowing freely now. "Why are you here in this place with my family? We're nobody special. We're just poor people trying to survive." Emmanuel reached out and gently wiped a tear from her cheek. "You're not nobody special. You're everything special. You opened your door to a stranger when you had nothing to offer. You cared for your mother with devotion, even when it cost you everything. You worked honestly and treated others with kindness even in your darkest moments. But there are millions of people suffering, billions of people who need help. Why us? Because I'm not limited by time or space the way you understand them," Emmanuel explained. "I can be with everyone who needs me in every moment they need me. Right now I'm here with you. But I'm also with a mother in Syria holding her wounded child, with an old man dying alone in Tokyo, with a teenager in New York who thinks nobody cares about him." Maria tried to wrap her mind around this concept but found it impossible. "I don't understand." "You don't have to understand everything," Emmanuel said gently. You just have to trust that love is bigger than your understanding. Love can be everywhere at once. Love can heal what seems broken beyond repair. Love can provide when there seems to be nothing left to give. They sat in silence for several minutes as the last light faded from the sky. Maria felt as if her entire view of reality had been turned upside down. Everything she thought she knew about how the world worked had been challenged in the past few days. What happens now? She finally asked. Now you make a choice, Emmanuel replied. You can go back to your old way of thinking, where miracles are impossible and love has limits. Or you can step into a new way of living, where love is the most powerful force in the universe and nothing is impossible for those who believe in it. And if I choose to believe, what then? Emmanuel stood up and offered her his hand. When she took it, she felt a warmth and strength that seemed to flow through her entire body. Then you become part of the miracle, he said. You become someone through whom love works in the world. You become my hands and feet, my voice and heart, for people who are still waiting for someone to knock on their door. As they walked back toward the apartment together, Maria felt as if she was seeing everything with new eyes. The shabby courtyard looked beautiful. The old building seemed filled with possibilities. Even her own reflection in the dark windows looked different, stronger, more hopeful, more alive. She was no longer just Maria, the struggling daughter and unemployed factory worker. She was Maria the witness, Maria the believer, Maria the one who had been chosen to see love in human form. And that changed everything. The television trucks arrived on Tuesday morning, their satellite dishes and bright lights transforming Maria's quiet street into chaos. Word about Emmanuel had spread far beyond their neighborhood, reaching reporters in Mexico City who smelled a sensational story about miracle healings in Tijuana. Maria watched from her apartment window as crews set up cameras and journalists practiced their opening lines. Her stomach churned with anxiety. This was exactly what she had feared would happen. Mama, don't go outside today, she told Carmen, who was getting ready for her morning walk. There are news people everywhere and they're asking questions about Emmanuel. What kind of questions? Carmen asked, looking worried for the first time since her recovery. They want to know if he's really performing miracles. They want to interview people who claim they've been healed. They want proof. Emmanuel appeared in the kitchen doorway carrying a cup of tea. He looked completely calm despite the circus assembling outside their building. The reporters want to interview you, Maria told him. They're calling you the Miracle Man of Tijuana. They want you to demonstrate your healing powers on camera. Emmanuel sipped his tea thoughtfully. And what do you think I should do? I think you should leave, Maria said quickly. Before this gets any worse. These people don't understand what you're really about. They just want spectacle and drama for their news stories. Are you asking me to go because you're ashamed of me? Emmanuel asked gently. No. I'm asking you to go because I'm afraid for you. And for us. When these reporters can't get the story they want, they'll turn mean. They'll try to expose you as a fraud. They'll dig into your background, ask for documentation, demand proof of things that can't be proved. As if summoned by her words, there was a sharp knock at the door. Maria looked through the peephole and saw a woman in an expensive suit holding a microphone, flanked by a camera crew. Señora Gonzalez? The woman called out. I'm Isabel Vargas from Channel 7 News. We'd like to ask you a few questions about the man staying in your apartment. Maria looked at Emmanuel, who nodded encouragingly. Against her better judgment, she opened the door. Señora Gonzalez, is it true that this man Emmanuel has been performing miraculous healings in your neighborhood? Isabel asked, stepping forward aggressively while the camera rolled. I can only tell you what I've seen with my own eyes, Maria replied carefully. And what have you seen? I've seen my mother recover from a stroke. I've seen neighbors helping each other more than ever before. I've seen hope return to people who had given up. Isabel looked disappointed by this measured response. But what about the supernatural claims? People are saying this man can heal with a touch, that he can provide money and food out of nowhere. Do you believe he has divine powers? Before Maria could answer, Emmanuel appeared beside her in the doorway. The camera immediately swung toward him and Isabel's eyes lit up with excitement. Emmanuel, finally. I'm Isabel Vargas from Channel 7. The whole country wants to know, are you claiming to be some kind of holy man? Can you really perform miracles? Emmanuel looked directly into the camera with those impossibly calm eyes. I make no claims about myself. I simply try to love people and serve them however I can. But witnesses say you've healed the sick, provided money for the poor, made food appear when cupboards were empty. How do you explain these reports? I can't explain love, Emmanuel replied simply. I can only practice it. Isabel's frustration was becoming obvious. Sir, with respect, that's not an answer. People are traveling hundreds of miles to see you. They're calling you a prophet, a saint, even suggesting you might be Jesus Christ himself. Don't you think you owe them a clear statement about who you are? Emmanuel was quiet for a long moment, and Maria could see something sad pass across his face. If I told you I was a carpenter from Nazareth, would you believe me? He asked finally. That's not a serious answer, Isabel snapped. If I told you I was the son of a poor family who came to serve rather than be served, would that be enough? People want to know if you have supernatural powers. They want proof. Emmanuel stepped closer to the camera. The proof is all around you. Look at the faces of the people in this neighborhood. See how they're caring for each other. Watch how strangers have become family. Notice how hope has replaced despair. What more proof do you need that love is the most powerful force in the universe? Isabel tried a different approach. Can you heal my cameraman's bad back right now on live television? Emmanuel looked at the cameraman with compassion. Are you in pain, my friend? Every day for the past 5 years, the man replied honestly. Emmanuel walked over and gently placed his hand on the man's shoulder. The pain in your back comes from the pain in your heart. You carry too much anger toward people who have hurt you. Forgiveness would heal more than your back. It would heal your soul. The cameraman stared at Emmanuel in shock. How could you possibly know about... who told you about my personal problems? Nobody told me. Love recognizes suffering wherever it exists. Isabel was growing more frustrated by the minute. This isn't what our viewers want to see. They want miraculous healings, supernatural demonstrations, proof that God is real. God is real in every act of kindness, Emmanuel replied. God is real in every moment of forgiveness. God is real in every choice to love instead of hate. If people need more proof than that, I can't help them. The interview continued for another 10 minutes, with Isabel becoming increasingly aggressive and Emmanuel remaining serenely calm. Finally, the news crew packed up and left, clearly disappointed that they hadn't gotten the sensational footage they wanted, but other visitors were less easily dismissed. Later that afternoon, 3 men in dark suits arrived claiming to be from the Department of Immigration. They demanded to see Emmanuel's identification papers and wanted to know his legal status in Mexico. I don't carry identification, Emmanuel told them calmly. Everyone must carry identification, the lead officer replied sternly. It's the law. Where's your birth certificate? Your passport? Your visa? I wasn't born in any hospital that keeps records, Emmanuel said. I don't belong to any country that issues passports. The officers exchanged glances. Sir, if you can't prove your legal right to be in Mexico, we'll have to detain you. Maria stepped forward. He's my guest. He's done nothing wrong. Harboring an illegal immigrant is a serious crime, Senora. We could arrest you too. Emmanuel placed a gentle hand on Maria's arm. It's all right. I knew this day would come. What do you mean? Maria asked, panic rising in her voice. Emmanuel looked at her with infinite love and sadness. I mean that the world has always been uncomfortable with love that asks nothing in return. People want to control it, regulate it, prove it, or destroy it. But love can't be contained by laws or explained by logic. The lead officer was losing patience. Sir, you're coming with us for questioning. You can cooperate voluntarily or we can arrest you. I'll come voluntarily, Emmanuel said. But first, may I say goodbye to my friends? He turned to Carmen, who had been watching from the doorway with tears in her eyes. He took her hands in his and spoke quietly to her for several minutes. Then he embraced Maria, holding her close as she cried. This isn't the end, he whispered in her ear. This is just the beginning. Everything I've taught you about love, about service, about faith, now you get to live it out on your own. You don't need me to be present for love to work through you. But I do need you, Maria sobbed. How can I do any of this without you? Emmanuel pulled back and looked into her eyes. Because I'll never really leave you. Every time you choose love over fear, I'll be there. Every time you help someone in need, I'll be working through you. Every time you forgive instead of seeking revenge, you'll be proving that love is stronger than death. The officers led Emmanuel away in handcuffs, and Maria watched from her window as the man who had changed her life disappeared into the back of a government vehicle. The government offices had no record of anyone named Emmanuel being detained. Maria spent 3 days going from one building to another, asking questions, filling out forms, pleading with officials who claimed they had never heard of the case. It was as if Emmanuel had simply vanished into thin air. Maybe he was never arrested at all, suggested Rosa when Maria came to work looking exhausted and defeated. Maybe he just left. I saw them put him in handcuffs, Maria insisted. I watched the car drive away. But as the days passed with no trace of Emmanuel, even Maria began to wonder if she had imagined it all. Had there really been a mysterious stranger who healed her mother and transformed their lives? Or had she been so desperate for hope that her mind had created an impossible story? Then she would look at Carmen, who remained completely healthy and energetic, and she would know that something extraordinary had definitely happened. Her mother's recovery was real. The paid rent was real. The job at Rosa's cafe was real. The food that neighbors continued to bring by was real. "Mija, you look so sad," Carmen said one evening as they sat together in their small living room. "Emmanuel told you this would happen, didn't he? That his time here would be short?" "He hinted at it," Maria replied. "But I thought we'd have more time. I thought he'd stay until I really understood what he was trying to teach me." "What do you think he was trying to teach you?" Maria considered the question carefully. "That love is more powerful than I ever imagined. That miracles happen when people open their hearts to each other. That we're all connected in ways we don't usually recognize. And do you believe those things now?" "I'm trying to. But it's hard to have faith when the person who inspired that faith is gone." Carmen reached over and took her daughter's hand. "Mija, Emmanuel isn't gone. Look around you. Look at what's happened to our neighborhood since he was here." Maria had noticed the changes, but she hadn't thought about them as Emmanuel's continuing influence. The corner store that had always been just a place to buy necessities had become a community gathering spot where people lingered to chat and check on each other. The children who used to play alone in the courtyard now played together in mixed groups, regardless of their family's economic status. Señor Martinez, the elderly man who lived alone on the first floor, no longer ate dinner by himself. Different neighbors took turns inviting him to share their meals. The teenage boys who used to get into trouble spray painting walls had started a project to paint murals depicting scenes of hope and community. It's like he planted seeds, Maria realized, and they're growing even though he's not here to tend them. The next morning at the cafe, Maria witnessed another example of Emmanuel's lasting influence. A young woman came in carrying a baby, looking exhausted and worried. She ordered only a cup of coffee, the cheapest thing on the menu, and counted her coins carefully before paying. Without being asked, Rosa brought the woman a plate of fresh pastries and wouldn't accept payment for them. "For the baby," she said simply. Growing children need good food. But the kindness didn't stop there. Other customers in the cafe began approaching the young mother. One offered her information about a job opening. Another gave her a bag of baby clothes her own children had outgrown. A third offered to watch the baby for free while the mother went to job interviews. This is what Emmanuel meant, Maria thought as she watched strangers becoming family. This is love multiplying. Word of Emmanuel's disappearance had spread throughout the city, but instead of diminishing people's faith, it seemed to have strengthened their resolve to continue what he had started. Support groups formed to help unemployed workers find jobs. Neighborhood medical clinics staffed by volunteers opened in empty storefronts. Community gardens sprouted in vacant lots. A month after Emmanuel's disappearance, Maria received an unexpected visitor. Diego, the grocery store owner, knocked on her door carrying a large envelope. "This came to my store addressed to you," he explained. "But there's no return address and I don't recognize the handwriting." Inside the envelope was a letter written in Emmanuel's careful script. "My dear Maria, if you're reading this, it means I've moved on to where I'm needed next. Please don't be sad. This was always part of the plan. I want you to know that the time I spent with your family was one of my greatest joys. Your kindness to a stranger, your devotion to your mother, your willingness to believe in love even when everything seemed hopeless. These things remind me why I never give up on humanity. You asked me once who I was, and I asked you who you thought I was. But the real question was never about my identity. The real question was about yours. Who are you, Maria? You are someone through whom love works in the world. You are someone who makes miracles possible by opening your heart to others. The healing you witnessed, the provisions that appeared, the hope that returned to your community. None of this happened because I'm special. It happened because you chose love over fear, generosity over selfishness, faith over despair. I was just the catalyst. You were the miracle. Keep choosing love, Maria. Keep serving others. Keep believing that impossible things become possible when people work together with open hearts. And know that every time you do these things, I am with you. Tell your mother that her faith sustained me during our time together. Tell Rosa that her cafe has become a sanctuary where lonely people find family. Tell your neighbors that their kindness to strangers is creating a new kind of community. And tell anyone who will listen that love never abandons those who need it most. Sometimes it comes in the form of a mysterious stranger. Sometimes it comes through the compassion of friends and neighbors. Sometimes it comes from deep within your own heart. But it always comes. I love you, Maria. I love your mother. I love your entire community. And I'm proud of what you're becoming. Until we meet again, Emmanuel. Maria read the letter 3 times, tears streaming down her face. When she finally looked up, she saw that Diego was crying too. He was something special, wasn't he? Diego said quietly. Yes, Maria replied. But so are we. That's what he came to remind us. 5 years later, Maria's neighborhood had become famous throughout Mexico as a model of community cooperation and mutual aid. Visitors came from other cities to study how a poor barrio had transformed itself into a thriving, supportive community where nobody went hungry and everyone looked out for each other. Maria still worked at Rosa's Cafe, but now she also coordinated the neighborhood's various charitable programs. Carmen, still healthy and energetic in her 70s, ran a tutoring program for local children. Together, they had turned their small apartment into an informal community center where people came for help, advice, and fellowship. When visitors asked Maria to explain how the transformation had begun, she would tell them about the stranger who had knocked on their door when they needed hope most. Some listeners believed her story completely. Others thought she was speaking metaphorically about the power of community organizing. A few dismissed it entirely as wishful thinking. But Maria had learned that it didn't matter what people believed about Emmanuel's identity. What mattered was that they believed in love's power to change lives. What mattered was that they chose to be instruments of that love in their own communities. Every evening before sleep, Maria would stand on her small balcony and look out over the neighborhood Emmanuel had helped transform. Children played safely in the courtyards. Elderly people sat together sharing stories and meals. Young families received support and encouragement from their neighbors. Former strangers had become extended family. Thank you, she would whisper into the warm night air. Thank you for showing us who we really are. And sometimes when the wind was just right, Maria could swear she heard a familiar voice whisper back, Thank you for showing the world who I really am. The miracle continued, one act of love at a time.